Spotlight podcast with our host, Scott Smith. Scott, what's going on, man? How are you?
Neil, I'm spectacular, and I am so excited to have our guest today.
All right. So who's our guest?
We have Versavia, and Versavia, I'm going to say your name wrong. Despars?
You got it, Versavia
I
Despard.
got it with Pivot Branding. How are you today, Versavia?
I'm doing so fantastic. It's so wonderful to be able to chat with you guys and discuss these tactics that I think are going to help a lot of people.
Awesome.
All right. So go, Scott. I'm ready.
All right, we're going to
Question.
dive right in. So first things first, you got your Story Brand Guide certification. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's
You're
super
welcome.
exciting.
So tell everybody why that's such a big deal.
Yeah, so I have always seen story as such a powerful element in branding. And I started my career in video. So in video, you have to take hours and hours of footage, you have to edit it down and make it, clear and cohesive so that people understand what you're trying to say. And so oftentimes you have like 2, 3 hours of footage. You have to bring that down to 3 minutes, and then from there, sometimes even 30 seconds. So I really learned the power of editing and telling a story as quickly and efficiently as possible. So that's always been a theme throughout my career. And so when I pivoted to focusing on design, I really took some of that with me. And it's been a part of my process to include storytelling. But what's really cool about the Story Brand framework is that it took everything I knew about marketing, about storytelling, and it gave me a framework that I could really organize these elements into and create a system so that people can have a way to tell their brand story and invite their customers into that story. And it allows them to connect with people on a whole other level, which gets you leads, it gets you loyalty from people, because people are actually excited what you're saying and they want to learn more. It sparks that curiosity when you can invite people into a story. So that is why I really appreciate the Story Brand system, because it just consolidated and put everything into a framework, and everything just clicked for me. And that's why I was so excited to get that certification. And that was just a couple weeks ago. And it's already been paying off incredibly for me. So I'm really excited about it.
Now, so you talk about story brand. Define story brand to people. I've been it's been modeled to me by specific clients before, but kind of explain it to our audience.
Right. So StoryBrand is a framework. It's a system of incorporating storytelling into your branding and your messaging so that it connects with people. So I don't know if you're familiar with the hero's journey. It's a tool used in film to organize the formula of the most commonly told stories. For example, Star Wars, you have the hero's journey where, Luke is lost. He has lots of problems. He's, kind of a bratty kid, and he has to like find his way in the world, and he meets his guide, Obi-Wan, and the guide tells him what to do, gives him a plan, and sends him on his way so that he can conquer the problems in the world, like, planets are blowing up, so you got to solve that, right? So what StoryBrand does is it takes that formula for story and applies it to branding. So the key paradigm shift that it does is it shifts the hero in the story from the business to the customer, which I think is so key, because even in sales all the time, you always have to put that customer as the hero in the story. And you think about, oh no, but what about me? Like, what about the business? That should be the hero. But that is a really big issue, because the hero in the story, especially in the beginning of the story, is weak. They need help. And you don't want to position your business as the hero, because you don't want to appear as weak. You don't want to talk about what your mission is and what your history and nobody cares. They just want to know what you can do to help them. And that's what StoryBrand does so well, is it repositions your messaging to put your customer as the hero, and it invites them into a story. And the really cool part is, now you can be positioned as the guide instead of the hero that needs help. So people will look to you. And that's another thing that I was talking about recently on my LinkedIn, is that like people, like heroes out there aren't looking for another hero. they're looking for a guide to help them through their issue. So that is another really powerful element of this, is it positions you as the guide, which brings you more business because people want that guide to help them. They don't need another hero. They hear your story and they hear your mission, and then you position yourself as a hero and they say, cool, thanks, that's interesting. And then they move on and they don't give you business. And that's why it's so important to position yourself as the guide. And that's what the story brand framework does.
And see, and I love that. So when I first heard you mention that, and you were going to give a presentation about it, right, in a different forum that we were both attending, I decided that I was going to read the book. And so I read the book, and it really, like you described it for you, it resonated with me. So it gave me a kind of a little bit of a push to change how I message and how I brand myself, which I was really appreciative of. But it kind of helped me develop my own passion for that, as I have struggled with what my branding should look like, as every business owner does, right? So talk to us about how you, I mean, even before StoryBrand, how did you develop your passion for branding and advertising? And what led you to found Pivot Branding?
Right. So like I said, I started in video. So I worked at an ad agency for a while on their video team. And that got me really excited about the power of storytelling and how that can apply to advertising. And then when I got my advertising degree and worked at a digital marketing company for a while, I moved to a different state. And so I had a bit of a transition period. So for a while, I was looking for an agency position again, because that's what I knew. That's what I figured the good next step would be. But that happened to be right at the time where everyone was getting laid off. So finding a job at that time, especially moving to a new state, and it was right before the holidays, I was absolutely crushed because like job searching, getting rejected day in, day out, it's just horrible for your self-esteem. And I know that many people can relate to that journey. And it's just so disheartening, and you just feel so low about yourself. And so finally around Christmas time, which that was a very sad Christmas, by the way, I kind of reached my breaking point, and I realized that this was just not working anymore. And so I just kind of decided that this is it. I can't just keep looking for a job endlessly. And then, once I do get a job, I'll probably just get laid off anyway with the way things were going with the market. So I knew that there had to be another way, and I've always been very entrepreneurial. And so I've already been freelancing up like during my job search. So I decided just to go all in on it. And that's when I, printed out some little flyers and I went business to business, and I had no idea what I was doing. And it was really cringy, especially for me as an introvert. To do that was absolutely terrifying. But I was at that point where it's like, rent is due. You have to go out there and hustle. Otherwise, like, there's no choice. You just have to. And so I, like through trial, like literally trial and error, I learned how to do sales and how to like actually start the business, because I've been in design for 8 years, and having a marketing background, I was like, yeah, this is going to be easy. Like I know how to do all this. And no, like starting a business is completely different, and it's not nearly as like fairy tale easy as I thought it would be. But I think that's part of the fun, is just failing, trying again. And that really kind of shaped where I wanted to take the business. I switched from like a freelance model to, no, I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own business. And that was a really good mind shift to have, because it's not that I'm contracted to work for other businesses. I'm actually, going out there and finding my own clients. And so that was a really good change for me. And so in May of this year, so it's only about 6 months ago, I started my own business, Pivot Branding. And that is really when I started rolling forward. And it took about a month and a half to land my first client. And even that was a miracle, because at that point, even I still was struggling with my offer. I wasn't sure how to phrase it and how to position what I was offering, because there's so many things that I could say and could do. And so I finally kind of narrowed it down. And right now, I just feel so excited to be offering something that has been already helping business owners. I just had a client reach out to me thanking me, like, I just got new leads from my business that you redesigned, and I'm so happy because it's actually like working. And that's where you see the power of messaging, because design is good, messaging is good, but you have to have both to have a really strong brand. And that's kind of my sweet spot. I excel in combining those two. And I'm really passionate about having that clear message, because clarity and focus in what you offer to people is so important. But you also have to present it in a beautiful way that's, helps people connect to it emotionally. So that's really what led me to develop Pivot Branding the way it is now. And because I offered the messaging side, the copy, I call it the verbal identity and the visual identity. It's the two halves of the same coin.
Let's go to specifically the power of story. I'm able to tell stories on my podcast because I'm a former professional wrestler, and I told stories as either the heel or baby face every match. So I wrestled as a professional wrestler, minor leagues for X amount of years, and learned about story. But it makes so much sense when you talk about, you don't want to be the hero. Your brand needs to be big, but what are you going to do to help your clients? What are their pain points? What do they truly want that's going to be life transforming? And if you don't have an offer that's not life transforming, you're going to hate that you got that client. And it has to be a transformational offer, that's something that's going to change who they are. And a lot of people, when they listen to businesses or individuals, they're looking for marketing, they don't listen to their challenges. They don't look at their pain points. And it's very interesting where you're helping businesses identify the ideal client's pain points, what they're struggling with, and what's that going to look like after that company's done with them, in a way.
Absolutely. And you bring up a really good point, because, and this is something that Donald Miller, the author of StoryBrand, talks about a lot, is that there are only two things that the brain really does and focuses on throughout our lives. And the first thing is to survive and thrive. We just need to, it's like always scanning the environment, seeing how the brain can help us live and live better. And then the other thing is the brain is always trying to conserve calories. It's like an instinctual survival tactic that the brain does. And so if your message, one, does not connect to their need to survive and thrive, like if you're not actively telling them how it's going to make their life better and how they can survive with your service, then they're going to tune out immediately. And the other half of that, if you make it complicated for them to understand, if it's confusing, if things don't line up, if your messaging doesn't match what you're saying with your visual identity, if things are not clear, you're causing them to waste calories trying to process what you're saying, and they're going to immediately tune out. They're going to not waste their calories, their brain energy, trying to understand what you're selling them. So that's where it's so important to have such a clear offer, because people will not take the time to just sit down and understand. It may be clear to you, but that does not mean it's clear to them.
Okay.
I think that's such a huge point, because being clear to them is so necessary. And I ran across that in the early stages of my business. I knew what I was offering, but nobody knew who I was, right? Or what I was trying to do. So Versavia, so we're kind of coming down here to the end of our time. Talk a little bit about the role that social media plays in modern branding.
Social media is a really powerful driver nowadays. And it's one of those things that continues to tell your story. And if your social media presence doesn't line up and isn't consistent with what you already started in your website or wherever else you had your first touch point with, then people aren't going to build on that trust. But if you have that social media that continues telling your story and it's all telling the same thing, that has really strong power that can really help your brand continue to grow. So I see social media as just a way to show your authenticity. And you claim to be one thing on your website, and your social media is kind of your, the receipts. It's the real deal. You have to show up and prove that this is who you are, and be consistent and show up all the time. It's not just one or two posts here, but you're always showing up, you're always there. And that is what, just in the modern day business, you just need to have some social media presence. And I'm not saying every single program. You don't need to be on Instagram and LinkedIn and all of them. Just choose 2 or 3 that you can really narrow down and focus, or even just one. If you can just do one really well and commit to it, that's better than doing 6 of them, 20% effort.
Got
So
it.
that would
Makes
be my
sense.
advice. Yeah.
Where's the best place people can find information on Pivot Branding? Where can they go?
I'm really active on LinkedIn. You can find me under the name Versavia Despars or Pivot Branding. And I also have a website, pivotbranding.co. And I offer a free consultation if people want to get together and talk about their branding and if they have questions. So they can find it on my website, pivotbranding.co.
All right. That was a special simulcast of the